Sewell, in Black Beauty, addresses a number of key concepts. She looks at the treatment of horses with the view to correcting that treatment. Treatment includes breaking in, constant selling of horses, groom or stable management, different riding styles, the roles performed by horses, the merciful killing of horses, and the abolition of the bearing rein. She also discusses human behavior. In addition to its intersection with the treatment of horses, here she includes addressing drinking alcohol, cabbies, or working men not working on Sundays within a system that made it difficult not to, and related to this, the work of butchers' horses. She also discusses naming, another key aspect of Black Beauty. Although naming of the horses gives the horse autonomy and subjectivity, the name is awarded by a human and relates to the idea that the horse remains a possession. Lastly, a key aspect of Black Beauty is its narration. It is an autobiography narrated from the equine by Anna Sewell. The horse, as sentient being with feelings, speaks in inverted commas for other oppressed horses. Alice and I will look at roughly two aspects of Black Beauty. Alice, the historical contextual information and the treatment of horses and its effects today, and Brenda, the first-person narration, specifically Christian narration and the creation of the implied reader. Of the critical readings listed for this week's module, Alice will touch on Animal Autobiography and the Domestication of Human Freedom by Annie Dwyer. Brenda will look briefly at animal autobiographies, Talking Animals in Children's Fiction, 1786 to 1914, by Tez Coslet.
Black Beauty was written between 1872 and 1877 by Anna Sewell, a Quaker from Great Yarmouth with a passion for horses and the advocacy for their equal treatment. Black Beauty was Anna Sewell's only novel, and it was originally intended as a guide for adults who owned or cared for horses, and wasn't remotely intended to be a children's novel. However, Black Beauty became and remains one of the top 10 best-selling children's novels ever written from the perspective of an English horse telling the story of his tumultuous life. Although animals have been used in children's literature and as learning tools, such as when memorising the alphabet, and animal autobiographies were certainly not a new thing, Anna Sewell's Black Beauty was one of the most successful novels in the genre. It is unusual that novels written for children focus on content which is not only uncomfortable to read, but which is true, and Anna Sewell undoubtedly is responsible for many adults who read Black Beauty as children and ended up growing up to be animal activists and empathisers of animal autonomy and suffering. At the time of Anna Sewell writing Black Beauty, horses powered everything which we now power with machines or cars. They were the driving force behind construction, agriculture and transport, as well as being symbols of wealth and success. The terms workhorse and horsepower come into effect here, with horses working so hard, so long, and being subject to unfair, painful or uncomfortable traditions and treatment for the benefit of the humans who rode or used them. Horses would quite often be worked to death or to extremely ill health. Being of ill health herself, having suffered severe damage to her ankles as a teen, and consequently relying on horses to get around, Anna Sewell used her talents for writing to create Black Beauty as an attempt to speak for those who could not speak for themselves. Born as a Quaker, whose fundamental beliefs focus on equality, morality, and living with a clean conscience, Anna Sewell was undoubtedly highly influenced by her upbringing and spirituality when she advocated for horses with such passion and honesty in the pages of Black Beauty. Sewell brought particular focus to the use of bearing reins, an uncomfortable method of controlling a horse with a painful bit in the mouth, attached so tightly that they cannot reasonably move their head without experiencing extreme pain. After the publication and phenomenal success of Black Beauty, the usage of bearing reins was greatly reduced. Similarly, the publication of Dickie Downey, the autobiography of a bird, written by Virginia Sharp Patterson some 24 years later, brought to light the need for legislation to protect non-game birds from being illegally shipped across state lines and unnecessarily hunted. Still today, Although we have come a long way in our treatment of animals, many animal rights activists believe animals are born into slavery, and in the notion of speciesism, a coin termed by modern-day animal rights activist Peter Singer, whose 1970s publication Animal Liberation inspired many to adopt cruelty-free lifestyles.
In Animal Autobiographies, Talking Animals in Children's Fiction, 1786 to 1914 by Tez Coslet, Coslet talks about animal autobiographies in general, saying that the genre was a persistently popular one in the long 19th century. Black Beauty was not the first of such stories. It was inspired partly by texts that came before it, and it went on to inspire texts after it. The stories were nearly always written to argue for better treatment of animals, and were nearly always addressed didactically to children who were likely to be moralized by the tale and grow up to treat animals correctly. The genre could also satirize human behavior, particularly as it related to class. It was sometimes used to impart natural historical information. Coslet also looks at how animal subjectivity in the autobiographical mode was created by the narrator through language and naming. She looks at the intricacies of how animals write, in inverted commas, and how the basic problem of animal autobiography was that it was obviously manipulated by the human behind the animal character. Acceptance by the reader of this fiction, Coslet refers to as the autobiographical pact. The convention in these stories was that the animals understood one another and they understood the humans, but the humans couldn't understand the animals. The fact that the animals talked to each other gave a conspiratorial sense of solidarity against humans. In Black Beauty, in addition to the above methods of communication, some humans communicated via tone and touch. Coslet says that the narratee in Black Beauty is never clear. In a section where Beauty talks about having to wear a bit in his mouth, he starts off in the third person but then moves on to more general they and those pronouns that seem to merge human narratee with the horse narratees. This pushes the human reader to identify with the horse experience. I agree with Coslet here. In many cases, Beauty is simply writing or thinking as opposed to talking, and the address is definitely a human-come-animal narratee. This therefore rational animal narrator that is so close to the human can make subjects like instinct and carnivorous animal behavior difficult to explore in the animal autobiography. Coslet says that the books don't pick up on the Darwinian idea that humans are animal kindred. Instead, they focus on the equation of the animal with the steam engine. This is seen in Black Beauty several times. I'm not sure I agree with Coslet here about no Darwinian influence. Darwin's theories were an important challenge to Christian thinking in the Victorian era. The animal autobiography genre elevates the position of the animal, and Sewell may well have been influenced by evolutionary ideas, but ones that merged the idea of a Christian creator with evolution. Coslet then talks about the comparison of animals in autobiographies to children, women, slaves, and servants. These particular groups are included because, like animals, they are often subject to men. Black Beauty ends, as do many animal autobiographies, with the character coming full circle and returning to his first Edenic home and being recognized, being called by his name.
As cited by Annie Dwyer in her 2015 article, Animal Autobiography and the Domestication of Human Freedom, in 1890, animal advocate George Angell, upon receiving a copy of Black Beauty, began to seek funding for the American Humane Education Society to enable the book to be published in America. George Angell notably prefaced the American edition with the claim that Black Beauty is the Uncle Tom's Cabin of the horse. In essence, he believed that Black Beauty could help to abolish inhumane treatment of horses in the same manner that Uncle Tom's Cabin affected the abolition of human slavery. Angel and other animal rights activists also worked to get Black Beauty translated into other languages and seeking it to be made into a play. Annie Dwyer states that Black Beauty had a few predecessors in the animal autobiography genre. One of these includes S.C. Carpenter's Autobiography of a Canary Bird, written in 1866, and Our Dumb Animals, written in 1868 by the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals from the Perspective of and from a Horse. However, Dwyer states that Black Beauty highly popularized the animal autobiography genre amongst American audiences via animal advocates, which may attribute to some of its long-lasting and far-reaching success. Dwyer points out that animal autobiographies contributed greatly to giving human characteristics to animals. Dwyer cites that according to Jennifer Mason, domestic animals in the 19th century were becoming increasingly recognized in the United States as being civilized, intellectual, emotional, and possessing moral qualities similar to that of humans. The key point of Annie Dwyer's animal autobiography and the domestication of human freedom is that animal autobiographies, including Black Beauty, appropriate the slave narrative and are responsible for manufacturing new methods of racial figuration and racial subjugation. Dwyer argues that the appropriation of the suffering of slaves can be seen in the themes in Black Beauty of capture, sale, separation from family, labour, abuse, restricted movement and mobility, and escape attempts. Dwyer also states that Black Beauty reinforces the association between blackness and animality, even in such obvious ways as Black Beauty's name as a foal being Darky, an obvious racial slur. Furthermore, Dwyer says that messages said to Black Beauty from his mother as a foal involve keeping his head down and encouragement and commendation surrounding the obeying of his master. Essentially, the message is to put up with the abuse and mistreatment and hope that good behaviour, rather than revolt, will lead to retribution. Annie Dwyer also makes interesting remarks surrounding wealth and classes, primarily that Sewell's writing of Black Beauty acts as a mode of class control. For example, all of Beauty's cruel masters are poor, working class, or immigrants. This perpetuates the negative stereotypes and feelings surrounding those from a less economically secure background. Dwyer discusses Gina Marlene Dawes' thoughts on how the bearing rein and iron bit act as a slave punishment for horses in the same manner the Victorian women of the time were enslaved by their bound and bustled body to mean their corsets and uncomfortable dresses which were the fashion of the time. As with women's clothing, the bearing rein was also a fashion statement and a symbol of class. Annie Dwyer links her discussion of the bearing rein back to her main argument surrounding the appropriation of a slave narrative, stating that Sewell's comments about breaking in being necessary infirms that suffering because of one's race is also necessary. Annie Dwyer's closing statement for her critical reading of Black Beauty is how she observes that animal autobiographies have a bizarre obsession with euthanasia of the animals within the story. The first American edition of Black Beauty actually had instructions on how to correctly and successfully kill a horse. Dwyer then links this to the desire for African Americans to disappear rather than be incorporated within society, to be discarded once they are no longer of use, and as a method of encouraging racial violence.
With Coslet's explanation in mind, I look at a section in Black Beauty from chapter 33 to 47, where Black Beauty enters into London cab work. The 6-day working week and its impact on Beauty and the human cabbies are presented here. I'm especially interested in the implied author and the implied reader. I see the implied author in Black Beauty as the author Anna Sewell, who was a Christian, specifically a Quaker, an activist very knowledgeable about horses, fair on the side of the workman, an animal rights activist, moralistic, and someone who remonstrates with Christians about their ignorance and hypocrisy regarding their treatment of horses. In autobiography, there is a reader expectation that the narrator is telling the truth about their situation. And in animal autobiography, as Coslet says, because animals can't actually speak, what they do say is seen as genuine. In the opening to this section of Black Beauty, Beauty describes his new master, Jerry Barker, thus: "I never knew a better man than my new master, kind and good, as strong for the right as John Manley, and so good-tempered. On Beauty's side, immediately, therefore, the implied reader is put in the position of judging Jerry as good, and by implication then later on those opposite to him as bad. And these moral codes are centered on the Christian God. The London cab horse sections that I'll briefly look at are the 6-day working license and the cabbie's working conditions, the religious reasons for the 6-day working week, and an exception to the no work on Sunday rule. If we look at the macro discourse or context of Black Beauty that relates to the section, the messages brought up in this section, we see in the progressive Victorian era early century protests and laws passed regarding social reform, an interest in working men's condition, but a paradoxical holding on to class hierarchies, growth of literacy, including for the working classes, an interest in natural history, ambivalent feelings regarding Christianity and Darwinism, but with Bible language remaining as the current common currency of Great Britain, a preoccupation with work and practical solutions, focus on reality, juxtaposed in literature with a holding on to some aspects of romantic writing, and promotion of children's literature through evangelical publishers. From chapter 35 and onwards, it discusses the issue of working on Sundays as experienced by Jerry and Beauty. Jerry chooses a 6-day working license, thereby ostensibly earning less than those cabbies with 7-day licenses. Because of the system in which the cabs were owned by people other than the drivers, it was difficult for the cabbies to make money, so the temptation to work 7 days was strong. We see here some of those Victorian-era macro discourse elements coming into play: working men, money, religion, utilitarianism. Chitty, Anna Sewell's biographer, says that Anna and her mother Mary were very involved in the lives of working men. At one time, Anna taught miners Sunday school, reading, writing, and natural history, and she formed the Working Men's Institute. The implied author here, Anna Sewell, addresses Jerry and Beauty's situation in the video that follows. Jerry turns down a Sunday request and Larry, another cabbie, takes up the offer. "Well," said Larry, "you'll never be a rich man." "Most likely not," said Jerry, "but I don't know that I shall be less happy for that. I have heard the commandments read a great many times, and I never noticed that any of them said, 'Thou shalt be rich.' And there are a good many curious things said in the New Testament about rich men that I think would make me feel rather queer if I was one of them." "If you ever do get rich," said Governor Grant, looking over his shoulder across the top of his cab, "you'll deserve it, Jerry, and you won't find a curse come with your wealth. As for you, Larry, you'll die poor. You spend too much on whipcord. You never take the trouble to see if he will go."